are here live with me on CMajor Before the Show. I'm your host, CMajor Porter. So much. Thank you for joining me today. Let me first of all say it's been an amazing week. It really has been an amazing week here in the greater New York City area. I thought last week was amazing because we had the U.S. Open. We had so many great things going on with sports. But it's really been an amazing week in terms of music making for me because of you, really, my students. And so those of you who are listening, who are my students, thank you for tuning in, first of all. We just have so much to share, really. I mean, I've had some new things to come across my desk this week, so I can't wait to tell you all about it. So thanks for joining us today. First of all, we're going to talk about chords because that's really our focus. We're going to stay focused today, I promise. We're talking about chords for students, chords that students can use for their learning. And I'm a student myself. I really don't consider myself a chords expert, but it's something that I'm really, really interested in. And I love having conversations with my students about chords and helping them to see how they can make discoveries in their own music making as they are out and about. And definitely they are out and about. You just won't believe some of the shout outs I'm going to give on today's podcast. But today's episode is more information about chords. And we're talking about that here on CMajor Before the Show. And then if you care to, you can listen to the CMajor radio show following this podcast episode. We're also going to attempt today to have a live poll. I'm not sure how far we will get with that, but we're going to attempt to do that today. And then we'll talk about some of the things that I'm finding out about wellness. So I think that's one reason why I felt like the week was so big. I mean, in terms of music making discoveries, it also was about making discoveries about wellness and some of the things that y'all should pay attention to, and then also just to bring it to your attention. Also, I have some invitations that came across my desk this week, so I want to share that with you. And for fun and laughter, of course, we always have our student shout-outs and the stories that I like to share. And basically, I'm just giving my opinion on a lot of what's going on with music making as I pay attention to what's going on out there and then bring it to you here on the podcast. And so I want you to always feel welcome to be here and to just have a conversation with us about what's interesting to you, because we're choosing music and topics that are interesting to us and then bringing those to you. Okay? So the first thing I want to talk about is more information about chords. So I like to compare and contrast the textbooks that come to my attention. So as you know, one of my personal goals is to learn a little bit more myself about jazz and blues and jazz harmony, and so I'm challenging myself to do that. And really, it was my students' idea. I want to give them credit for that. They were the ones that started asking me about jazz and blues. And so after that, I said, you know what? I really should try to study a little bit more myself, because all I really knew was classical. That's what I learned in school. I learned the classical way of playing. And my teacher was very classical focused. I mean, to the point of not really insisting that I did a lot of improvisation, but I will share a little bit with you about that too. Okay, so let's just see if we can get on some sort of track here. So this jazz harmony, that's at the top of my brain today. By the way, we will be talking about the B chord over at the CMajor radio show. So we're going in ABC order. Last week it was A. And so we'll just share with you some information about B over there. So I'll get a little bit more into how you might play a B chord on the piano, or how you might write it down using text and things like that. Okay, so we'll talk about that. But let me tell you a little bit more about this jazz harmony book that I happened up on. Let me just lower my music here. Okay, so I'm always a little bit careful on the podcast about saying names and giving references. I try to be confidential and I try to be as reserved as possible because you don't know who's listening, first of all. Number two, if you want to know a little bit more about the resources, feel free to get in touch with us. We want to hear from you. We want to know that you're genuinely interested in this information, not just writing it down and going, okay, what's this about? I mean, not that we don't want you to write down things, but it's just, I would love to have a conversation. And the podcast is really catered to my students anyway. So 9 times out of 10, I will have this conversation. We'll have this conversation with them in the first place. But I ran across this book on jazz harmony, and it was talking about jazz harmony at the piano, and it says it's a practical harmony method for the jazz musician, and that was great, I thought. So it's one of the many books I'm sure that's out there, but it seemed to me to really speak to me. So it covers everything from names of keys to different ways to play the chords. And the first thing that struck me was it was talking about the sixth chord. Now, in classical music, we talk about the sixth chord, S-I-X-T-H, but it was the first time I really saw in writing somebody talking about the sixth chord, S-I-X. And so I think when I went back to my regular music theory book for traditional harmony, then I understood it was just a reference to part writing. So that's really getting technical. I'm not even sure if I will cover something like that on the podcast. I'm really trying to keep it simple because, I want to be able to talk to my students as well as those who may not be my students, as well as those who may be playing professionally and those who are just taking lessons and they're just dabbling in music. So music is one of those things that it never gets old, really. You never get tired of having a conversation about a C chord. At least I don't. And so now I'm just grappling with the idea of, do we really need to talk about scales? Applaud if you think we should talk about scales. Okay, so we will talk about scales. I think it's important because I'm starting to cover scales with my students as well. So we will find a way to talk about scales that makes sense for the podcast. But let's see here. I just want to read a little bit of what I was coming across in this book about jazz harmony. So first of all, I love that the author said that the book does not pretend to be a piano method. And so that just made me realize, too, I should emphasize what I said last week. We're not trying to be the go-to place for piano lessons. There are enough of those out there. And, you have companies that try to be the go-to place for piano lessons and piano methods. But I think we just want that little corner. We just want that little part of the world that is interested enough to talk about chords. And I never get tired of talking about how I just stumbled upon a group of adult learners that were learning to play by chords and by ear, and they were chording melodies, and they were using chords in a certain way in their communities that worked, and They weren't waiting on somebody to come along and teach them proper piano lessons, and they just ran with it, and it was enough, you know. I mean, I would have to say that was transformative learning for me. And so in grad school, we did take a course called Transformative Learning, and I know what that meant to me. That meant really getting to the core of a person's foundation and then starting all over basically with them. And so I've seen that too, where you have musicians that started out a certain way, or they had a natural ability to play, or a natural ability for music, where you just totally ripped that apart and said, no, don't play this way, study this way. And then you just started them from scratch. Some musicians I saw in the community did well with that, and some of them didn't. Some of them really insistent on, no, this is the way I hear it. I need you to explain to me how to hear music this way and how to put these sounds together. This is the way that I intend to play or express music. And then you feel challenged to do that. But anyway, this book, getting back to the book, it says the book does not pretend to be a piano method. The technical side of playing the piano, except for the most elementary, falls outside of the scope of the book. But they're saying, that throughout the book you may encounter a fingering of a scale or an arpeggio. And so the book is going to talk about mostly keys and tones of the keyboard, intervals, chord symbols, harmonic functions, and the voice leading of chord progressions, and how to decorate, how to embellish chords, the relationship between melody and harmony, and much more. And so I did tweet something this week. I don't know if you saw it, but you can go to my Twitter and see that I said jazz is for the most part tonal harmony, and that came from this book. It was a direct quote. But, just really gave me some food for thought. Prospective jazz pianists may be disappointed when they encounter the classical sounding 4 or at the most 5-part chord progressions. In the examples that the book will give. And then the author says, to them, I wish to point out that a chord that sounds nice will merely form a good chord progression only if it properly connects to the preceding and following nice chords. That was such an important sentence, because I just grew up with piano players that played because it felt nice to play, first of all. It was more of like this digital satisfaction, meaning your fingers felt good. It felt good in your fingers to play certain passages, and you weren't even really thinking harmonically about what you were doing or what it was exactly. You just knew it felt right. And so finally, to get to that part in life where you really start to think about, okay, how is the music moving? How does this chord connect with another chord? What is the harmonic rhythm of the chords? Things like that. That's so fascinating to me now, whereas before I just really wasn't paying attention to it. And to be honest, for the life of me, I don't know why I'm not attracted to certain sounds. Why do I prefer certain sounds over another sound? I almost called today's episode, the importance of playing certain chords in certain communities, because I feel like sometimes you play the chords that can be used, wherever you are, if you're the person that's supposed to be playing the chords or playing the music. And so why use anything more than what you're given or what works for that particular moment? But to really understand how the connection of chords is so important, and which chords are more important, that's still a mystery to me. Is a major chord more important than a minor chord in some cases? What is it that really makes the music say what it's supposed to say? So this book will shed some light on that. I look forward to reading it. It's over 150 pages. And so I think, wow, I have my reading cut out for me. Now join us a little bit later over at the CMajor radio show, because we will be talking about what a B chord can do. So if you are thinking, oh, a B chord sounds nice. I've had students that say that. They'll say, oh, I like the sound of an A chord. It sounds nice. It reminds me of the color yellow or something like that. But that's in their mind. That's what they think. But what does a B chord sound like? Oh yeah, I need to write a note to give a shout out to another student who's into transposition. I will give a shout out to that student. I have several shout outs to give, by the way. So definitely hang on for that today. You don't want to miss that. Okay, I'm just making a note here. Okay, so let me step out of this book for a moment, because there was another book that came across my desk. But before I do that, let me just say that I'm going to go ahead and start our live poll. Okay, so let me go to my site where I do my poll. So you hear me typing something. And I'm so glad to be with you live today. I wasn't sure how the microphone was going to work today. Sometimes the microphone is doing its own thing, and I'm just glad we're able to connect with you in the way that we are today. So thank you for tuning in. Okay, so we are going to create a new poll, and this one is going to be multiple choice, the same way that we have been doing it in the past. Okay, so I kind of want to know from you, let me just lower my music for a moment, what your thoughts are when it comes to chords. We've been dabbling a little bit with that, but do you feel like a chord can sound nice on its own? Or does a chord sound nice when something else comes before it and after it? So I guess the question is, does a chord sound nice on its own, or does a chord sound nice within connection? Does a chord sound nice only within its connection to other chords? I hope I'm saying that correctly. Okay, so let me go back to, Okay, so we're going to call this the same title as our podcast today, The Importance of Playing Okay. All right, so question. A chord sounds nice when it is played by itself, or it is played in connection with other chords. Let's add two more options. One where you can say a chord sounds nice when it is played as part of a scale. And I don't know. not sure. Okay, so the title of this poll is called The Importance of Playing Certain Chords. And then it's put a hyphen, and I said, a chord sounds nice when, and then you have a choice. A, when it is played by itself. B, when it is played in connection with other chords. C, when it is played as part of a scale. And then the last one, D, when, I'm not sure. You can just say that. Okay, so we're just going to create that. And I will be answering this poll myself. So we're doing this live. That's the whole point of this website, is that you do things live. And so we can go ahead and present it, and then you'll be able to respond. Now, the way to respond is to go to our website. We're going to share 2 different places. I think I said our website. Let's go to our Twitter. Okay, so I'm just going to tweet this now. Okay, and we'll see what happens. You may or may not respond to this, but I'm going to respond later using the app. Okay, so that's on our Twitter, and now we're putting it on Facebook as part of CMajor Before the Show. A new poll is now posted. Okay, so have fun with that. Have fun with that. And then I will just check to see what the responses are. And then if we get more than the usual amount of responses, then I'll say something about it, or I may just mention it in passing on our next podcast episode. Okay, you are here with us on CMajor Before the Show. Back in a moment. And you are here with us on CMajor Before the Show. I'm your host, CMajor Porter. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm going to now turn my attention towards our music making and wellness topic. Okay, so that's something that I'm passionate about as well, because what I try to do is bring you some information that can help you keep well. And I don't want to pretend that I'm the expert on this. So we can't afford to do that as music teachers. I think I was reading something about that last week. But there's a very favorite celebrity doctor of all of us that is in New York, and I rely on what he posts, and I'm very happy to share with you some information from time to time. Also, in that same breath, I want to say that I was able to attend a brand new studio taping of someone who is, so it seems, someone who is looking to keep us well in a different way, emotionally well. And I really enjoyed the studio taping, so I'm going to give a hashtag for that. If you did see our post during the week, you saw that we did a hashtag and a thank you to this particular show that's about to launch this coming week. So in a few moments, I'm going to share with you that. But now let's just turn our attention toward the wellness information that I would like to share at this time. And so what I want to share is, first of all, one of the more recent things that he talked about was meals. So, we talk about eating a lot on this podcast. So I may say, oh, bring your organic pumpkin waffles. I may say, oh, bring your mini stuffed everything bagel to the podcast to have something to munch on while you're listening. But here's something that if you're into it, I'm not really into it. I don't even own one of these. It's a slow cooker. I've heard about them, but I have never used one. Personally, I've seen it done, but I just haven't. But it's just saying that you can learn how to cook meals in your slow cooker for under 500 calories. If that's something that you're interested in, let us know. We'll forward you the information. I'll forward you the link on how you can sign up so you can get this information for yourself if you happen to be counting calories. And then, oh yeah, did you hear this week that there's a way that they're doing this testing now? There's a way for you to age backwards now. I was baffled when I heard that some people were participating in a study where they aged backwards by like about 2 years or something like that. That was just mind-blowing. I couldn't even believe that. But I did not hear this doctor talk about that yet. But he does offer a real age test, so you can take the test and find out how to live younger. But I wonder what his thoughts are about that. Anyway, I'll have to ask him next time I see him. Now, if you are into junk food, let's go there. Because some of the things that I mentioned about munching on while you're listening to the show may include healthy food, it may include junk food, but let me just give this to you. It's healthy junk food alternatives. So one thing that I liked that this doctor said was that peanuts are not nuts, they're legumes. So you saw me post something like that on Twitter as well. But I always like finding something like that out that you should focus on. You should focus on mostly tree nuts and not nuts that come from underground. Okay, now get this. If you like potato chips, really rethink that you're eating potato chips. And as musicians, we all know that if you're busy doing a rehearsal, if you're in the middle of some sort of practice, that if you haven't eaten, it's so easy to step next door to a convenience store and just grab a bag of chips and munch on those and keep it going, or go to your favorite fast food place. And nothing against potato chips. Trust me, we all know that potato chips are a snack food favorite of a lot of people. But here's something you can try. It's called spinach chips. Now, I haven't tried these. I've tried kale chips before, but haven't tried spinach chips. But they're saying that this is an alternative if you want. Okay, maybe one or two more. Ooh, this is good. Now, you all know Junior's, right? Junior's cheesecake. Oh my goodness. I think I've even posted a picture on my Instagram and some of my friends liked it immediately because the little Junior's is just amazing. But let's say you want a sweet. I have a friend that has a daughter that's a nutritionist and she just says a sweet is a sweet is a sweet. The trick to dieting is to do more of something else and less of something else. It's really that simple. But let's say if you have a craving for cake, is it best to have that New York style cheesecake, or can you have something that's a little healthier? So they're saying try Greek yogurt cheesecake. And I have to try this myself. So instead of regular cheesecake, you can use non-fat plain Greek yogurt and non-fat cream cheese. And you probably won't even miss it. And just use honey and try to have honey take the place of white sugar. And that will add that sweetness that you're craving. Okay, let's do one more. Ooh. So if you are Now, I love apples, and we are in the apple season. So instead of cookies, try taking apples and then slicing them up so it looks like cookies, and you'll get the crunch. And so maybe you could even, and it doesn't say this, maybe you could even sprinkle like some cinnamon or something like that on the apples so it feels like you're tasting something special. Now, this is something I had not heard of. When I was a teenager, I was known for my chocolate chip cookies. But they're saying now, instead of regular chocolate chip cookies, try something called white bean chocolate chip cookies. So it's supposed to be less calories, and you can actually use beans. You can substitute that for other ingredients that may be a little less healthy, and they're supposed to be healthier for you and less calories. Okay, so that's it for our wellness. We just want to let you know that we have wellness in mind as much as we have music making in mind. We also have wellness in mind. Now, when I come back, I'm going to talk with you about an invitation that came across my desk. I'll be right back. And you are here with CMajor Before the Show, and your host, CMajor Porter. I just wanted to share with you, I'm really big on invitations, and thank you to those social media people, you know who you are, that keep sending me invitations. Now that you are listening to the podcast, you hear me say that I like to be invited, and I do. I think that's a big deal. I think it's a little disappointing when you're not invited somewhere and then you show up and realize, oh, I was not invited, or I don't belong here, or something like that. I have to play my laughter on that, keep it light. But this week it came across my desk. I'm not going to again say the source of the invitation, but I will say I had a few invitations that came across my desk. Some were music related, some were other related. But I was kind of excited about this. So let me see if I could pull that up really quickly. And it really had to do with what's going on in our community as artists, as musicians. And that's something that's been near and dear to my heart. It's something that keeps calling me. I can't get away from it. I tried many different things. I mean, short of going to law school, I really just felt passionate about music making and being a musician, and so this is the road that I choose. But if it wasn't calling me so strongly, I think I would just go to law school. Although I've spoken with friends who did go to law school who said they would not do it all over again. I don't know all the reasons why, but anyway, it means a lot to me to know there's a chance to have a conversation. And I was just watching a video, and there's an old teacher that's out there, probably one of the oldest teachers that we have when it comes to piano, and very wise, very seasoned, very informed, and even he said it's really, really difficult to find someone to have a conversation about music, a conversation that you would actually believe in. And so there are musicians, there are artists that are out there. There seems to be a way for those people to come together and have a conversation within a certain academic program. So I was invited to at least inquire and show some interest in that community. So I'm very happy about that. Please give me an applause for that. Thank you. So I'm really overjoyed. I'm not sure if I will actually join the community, but it just feels good to be invited. I've heard that too. I mean, there's so many academics out there who don't get invited to the table for anything, and they don't even know all the reasons why, and they're not sure why they are not liked. But, just to say, you know what, we are interested in your artistry. We are interested in your teaching experience. And so I'm just very happy about that. So thank you very much. If you happen to be listening, thank you. And I hope to be able to say thank you when we speak as well. Okay, now let's move on down the line because we're getting close to our time to head over to the CMajor radio show to talk about this B chord. Aren't you excited about B? Yes, B is something to be excited about. It is. And so now we're going to add some fun and laughter to today's podcast by sharing some student shout outs and some student stories. You want to hear this. Now, you are, again, welcome to join us over at the CMajor radio show for more Chords talk. But as we end today's podcast, we're just going to let you know that we have some students that did some really exceptional things this week. And one student is teaching himself to play the piano music from, I guess if you're a gamer, you're into Minecraft. I think that's what it's called. But the parents are excited about it because the student was self-motivated enough to learn to play the piano music, and the parents like it, and the parents feel like it's calm piano playing for the home, and they're really excited about it. So shout out to that student who's teaching himself the Minecraft theme. I think that's what it's called for piano. So applause and cheers. Okay, now we have another shout out for another student who is excited about fourths. Now this story is so cute. You just can't ignore how cute it is, really, because this student is learning about music in school, in elementary school, a very young student. And so in addition to piano, he's also starting to pay attention to how to learn to play songs that he likes by ear. So he's not into gaming. He's too young for that, but he is really paying attention in his music class. So as certain Disney songs are introduced, for instance, he's really paying attention to that. So it came across his mind, this one song that was sung by the Seven Dwarfs. And so it's the Hi-Ho song, right? H-E-I-G-H, Hi-Ho. And so I wasn't really sure of the words, so I couldn't really tell him the exact words, but we're going to explore that in our next piano class. But he was so excited about the song, and he was excited that I at least recognized the melody as he was singing it to me. And he wanted me to show him how to play that on the piano. Now, it just happens we were talking about fourths. We were talking about intervals. So he's learned his seconds. He's learned his thirds. He knows the difference between melodic and harmonic. And then this particular day, we're learning about fourths. And I said to him, this is a good time for you to bring up the Hi-Ho song because it starts with a fourth. He said, "What? It does? Oh, I'm so glad I know about music. That's great." And then right away, he was able to play it, start the song, and started to figure out the other intervals on his own. And then now he's thinking about transposing that. So big shout out to this student for his enthusiasm about fourths. That's great. It was just so cute. If you could have just seen his face just light up when he realized the song that he wanted to learn started off with an interval that he had just learned in piano class. So that was great. And to be able to think that way, because I think if you look at the method books, they will say, okay, try to have the student listen to the sound of these intervals or recognize them when they see them, how it's moving on the staff. Also the feel of it, the shape of the pentascale, if you're using the pentascale to explain intervals and things like that. Okay, now the next student I wanted to give a shout out to. Now this was a surprise. This student fell in love with When the Saints Go Marching In. So much so that she went to the internet to hear different versions of it. So she was doing this side-by-side listening, this comparative listening. And so we are playing a duet in class. And so her goal is to make When the Saints Go Marching In even better. And she's trying to decide whether or not she's going to keep in, was the chorus part, oh yes I want, or something like that. It's oh yes I do, something like that. And within this particular arrangement, whether she's going to keep that. Also, shout out to that student because she discovered she can start to tweak some of the arrangements in her book. So if there's a particular teaching piece that's not working for her, she can shorten or lengthen the time values so that it works for her and her playing. So I was very inspired by her openness and willingness to do something like that, and it actually worked better. She was able to shorten the time value of something that she felt was holding too long, and it made her anxious about changing her hand position to get to the next part of the song, and she was able to tweak it so that it worked for her. So big shout out to her. Okay, now we just have 2 more shout outs. Still very excited about my students and how they're learning and everything. And this is just amazing. I cannot tell you sometimes how you can overlook a student's talent or you don't realize how much they've grown. And this particular student is not only just a piano student, they're a student of other instruments, they're a student of singing. They sing in different groups at school and participate in different versions of band, concert band versus marching band and other bands. And it's just super, super talented. And I think I knew this, but I didn't know how talented until he was able to upgrade his sound. And I put a piece in front of him that I thought would be too difficult, and he just floored me by just reading through it, really. Just whizzing right through one of Bach's 2-part inventions. And I was just blown away. I thought we were going to start on first lessons in Bach just to get his fingering a little bit more tight. And then, because of the addition that we were using to play, but I put in front of him a version of a 2-part invention, and he didn't stop. He went from start to finish. So shout out to this student, because now we have to rearrange our plans for his learning and really put him on a track that's going to get him to grow in the way that he really sees himself growing. He's interested in music theory. He's interested in jazz theory and jazz harmony. He's interested in all of music, especially when it comes to reading music. And I just love working with him because he is not trying to get ahead of his own learning, because any other student would have probably said, this is too simple for me. Let me have something more difficult. But he never said that. He just went along with the program. And when he upgraded his sound, I think he realized he would be able to do more on this particular instrument that he has now. So big shout out to this student and for his growth. Okay, and our last shout out for today has to do with a student that is just blowing me away also. I mean, this student, oh my gosh, is learning to transpose. Now, while I have you on, let me go ahead and pull down my resource for transposition. So excuse me one moment, it's going to play some music, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So you probably heard a little movement in the background, but it was just because I wanted to share with you something that I did when I was learning piano. And just lowering music for a moment. And so this student is very young, so he's not studying anything like four-part harmony or anything like that, but my teacher would put in front of me, okay, here's a piece for you to transpose to F and D, and then I just did it. And then she would have me sight read passages from Chopin's Preludes and then tell me to identify where the seventh chords were and things like that. And so if you've heard me say in the past, you know, I've been privileged enough, really. I'll just say it that way, to study the Robert Pace method, and we studied a method called Skills and Drills, and that was my companion book, which is what it says here printed on the front of the book, on the inside front of the book. So this definitely helped me. I was not afraid to play my progressions in all keys and things like that. I was happy to do it and felt challenged to do it and was able to do it. And then now that I'm looking in the book, you know, there was a lot of emphasis on improvisation as well. And so my teacher did introduce me to improvisation as well as seven chords and so forth. But the part I want to bring your attention to is the transposition part. Now, if your teacher told you to play a progression, but play it in all keys, would you be happy to do something like that, or would you feel afraid to do something like that? Or if someone said, okay, after playing these progressions as written, transpose them by half steps to all keys, how would you feel about that? Well, lo and behold, I had the student this week who took it upon himself to play one particular song he was learning in his level 1 method book, to transpose that song by half steps to all keys. So big shout out to him, because he's volunteering to do it. He loves it. So that's just remarkable. Big shout out. Okay. All right. Now we're getting down to the very end of today's podcast episode, I promise. But like I said, I had a lot to talk about. It's a very different podcast today because a lot of things are going on this week. That studio taping I told you I was going to mention was hashtag Mel Robbins Show. I'll try to mention over at CMajor Radio Show as well. But hashtag Mel Robbins. Now, Mel is spelled M-E-L. Robbins is spelled R-O-B-B-I-N-S. So it's 2 B's. But hashtag Mel Robbins Show. And the reason I'm bringing her up is because I think she really has the heart to make a difference when it comes to people's lives. And I love the studio taping. I loved everything that she stands for so far. And so check it out. I think it's going to debut next week or this coming week. And so check your local listings. It's all out of New York. All you have to do is walk somewhere between Times Square and Carnegie Hall on 9th Avenue. If you just walk straight down from Times Square all the way down 9th Avenue, and you'll see all the different signs, because it's very close to where the studio taping is held and where she does the taping of her upcoming show. So best wishes to the producers, to the staff. Everybody was super amazing during the studio taping, and they said we could mention it in our social media, but just don't show pictures. So I haven't shown any pictures of the studio. I'm holding up my end of the bargain. But hashtag Mel Robbins show. And so I think you're going to like it. I like that she's trying to take care of all of us by getting us to think about positive things in our lives and how to create positive change for ourselves and things like that. Now, the next thing I want to mention, the last thing I want to mention, I ran across this tome. Are you familiar with that word, tome? T-O-M-E. If I remember correctly, tome stands for a very large book. And so this book is over 1,000 pages, but it's a new book. And what it does is tells you about every well-known piece of orchestral music. Now, when I looked inside, I started to see some names that were familiar to me were not here, but the cover says clearly it's every well-known piece of orchestral music. So as we were talking about Mendelssohn's music, remember when I was talking to you about the harmonic rhythm of one of Mendelssohn's pieces? So let's say if you want to know more about this piece, definitely get a hold of this book. Now, it's a big read. I don't think you should sit down and try to read the whole thing over a cup of coffee. But you can at least start the conversation with someone. So let me just page through here. Okay, so even has some of the piano concertos, which I was surprised to see. Just looking for that chapter on harmonic rhythm, because I think that's where I first started. So I'm just going to see right now. So I'm doing this live with you right now to see if this particular piece is in this book. And then this book will be my hero for today. Okay, so the Italian Symphony. Yes, it's there. Applause and cheers for that. Okay, so, just to refresh your memory on what the reading says, it says the rate at which the basic harmonies of a piece change is generally considerably slower than the rate of the actual notes heard. For example, the opening of Mendelssohn's Italian Symphony gives an impression of great activity and vitality with rapidly moving notes, yet its underlying harmonies are changing with much less haste. I love that because to really separate that out. I don't recall having a book that did that was separated out and say, okay, now let's take a look at how the harmony is moving. Because I think if you play by ear and by chords, that's what you're listening to. That's what you're responding to, that type of movement. So it's going to be very interesting to see how you answer this poll when I'm saying, okay, do you just get caught up on the harmony, the way that one particular chord sounded, or what's happening preceding that and after that? But here it says, there's only one chord in bars 1 through 4 and one in bars 5 through 6. The chords change more frequently in bars 7 through 10, but even these bars have only one harmony each, bar 9 being dominant throughout. This pattern of chord changes forms a rhythm of its own, the harmonic rhythm of the passage, and then they just give you a diagram of that. But I was just happy to see that they pointed this out for Mendelssohn's Italian Symphony. So I happened to hear a local orchestra perform this, and they were very, very good. I think it was earlier this year or last year or something. But now, let's see what this particular author has to say. So here he is. He's introducing this book to all of us. It's a very well-known professor in the greater New York City area, particularly in Connecticut, in New Haven. And he says, my earliest memories of listening to music and to orchestral music in particular go back to my grandmother's house in London. In the living room was a gramophone housed in a huge walnut box with a great hinged lid. No modern household contains anything quite so magnificent and evocative. This was before the days of long playing records, and the greatest excitement was to use the auto changer. So he talks about his memories of that. And then he goes on to talk about some of the recordings, including Beethoven's Emperor Concerto and things like that. But let's go to the Mendelssohn. Part of the book. Okay, so the Italian Symphony is mentioned on page 459. So again, it's a huge book, and it's very, very heavy. But good thing I went to the gym. I can carry this book. A little humor there for you. Okay, so if you know anything about the Italian Symphony, is approximately 30 minutes long. It says here approximately 29 minutes long, and then it gives you the 4 movements. But I just wanted to see if he said anything about the harmony of it at all. No, he doesn't. He really just talks about the rhythm. He talks about tempo. He talks about how it dances and things like that. And he talks about the time signature. And so I was hoping to see something about harmony here. But I imagine the audience that he's trying to address here are just to anyone that wants to know generally what they're going to be hearing if you happen to go to a performance, especially if you're in the New York City area and just stopping by to hear some great orchestral music. But stay tuned, because we will be talking a little bit more about this book as long as I have it on my table, because I got it from the local library, and it just talks about classical music from his point of view, how he wants to explain it to someone that just wants to know what you might hear if you go to a concert. So stay tuned for more of that. You were listening to CMajor here on CMajor Before the Show, and please join us. You are invited to join us over at the CMajor Radio Show a little bit later on this evening, probably around 6 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll try to be on over there, so I hope to see you over there. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk about chords again next week. And take out your pencil, your paper, your notation software, your Chromebooks, your iPads, whatever it is you have to write on, and think about making the best music you can make, but try to do it with chords. That's what we're encouraging you to do. Be grateful for the music that you can make. Just know that good things are coming to you, and don't forget to dream big and make the best music you can make. I will see you next time right here. Have a great evening. Take care.